Goose Hill. We dropped into the system at 0400 ship time on the third day of the campaign, 6,000 soldiers in 41 transports, with 2 cruisers and an escort screen of 9 corvettes overhead. The orbital force opposing us was a single human frigate of the Resolve class, which our intelligence had identified as obsolete by approximately 2 decades. The ground force opposing us was, according to our pre-drop briefing, a Royal Marine garrison of no more than 400 personnel, deployed to protect a mining colony on the southern continent of the planet's only inhabited landmass. I was, at the time of the drop, a company commander in the 16th Crinari Expeditionary, with 11 years of service and 3 prior planetary operations. I had been told to expect a quick action. The pre-drop briefing had used the word capitulation 4 times. The frigate engaged our cruisers within 30 seconds of detection. I want to record this, because I have read the official Crinari after-action report, and I do not believe it captures what happened in those 30 seconds. The frigate's captain did not run. He did not transmit a surrender request. He did not even attempt to maneuver into a defensive posture. He turned his ship directly into our formation, accelerated to maximum military thrust, and opened fire with everything his ship carried. He held the engagement for 11 minutes against a force 12 times his weight before his ship was destroyed. He took one of our corvettes with him. I bring this up because it was the first thing I saw of the human military, and because I now understand in a way I did not at the time that it set the pattern for everything that followed. We landed at 0700. Our staging area was a flat plain approximately 12 kilometers from the mining settlement. We deployed in the standard expeditionary formation, a forward screen of light infantry, a main body of heavy infantry with armored support, an artillery park to the rear. The brigade commander, General Vossarak, established his command post on a low rise and dispatched a courier to the human position under flag of truce. The flag of truce was honored. The courier delivered our offer of terms. The offer was generous. The garrison would surrender. Officers would retain personal effects and sidearms. Enlisted personnel would be processed humanely and repatriated at the conclusion of hostilities. The civilian population would be unharmed. By the standards of Crinari expeditionary doctrine, the terms were favorable. I have personally watched smaller garrisons accept worse. The reply came back within 40 minutes. The reply was a single sentence, signed by a Major Annette Halford of the Royal Marines. It read, "Thank you for your message. We respectfully decline. Please be advised that any advance on our position will be opposed." General Vossarak read the reply aloud to his staff. There was, I remember, some laughter. The brigade operations officer, a friend of mine, made a small joke about the human gift for understatement. I laughed with them. 400 Marines, no orbital support, no possibility of relief within a 30-day window, against 6,000 of us with armor and artillery. The reply was charming. I want to describe the first night carefully, because it was the night we understood that the briefing had been wrong about something, although we did not yet understand about what. The advance had gone well for the first 8 hours. We had taken the outer mining facilities without resistance. The humans had evacuated the civilians and withdrawn to a defensive line on a ridge approximately 4 kilometers south of the settlement, which our maps designated as Hill 287, but which the humans, according to intercepted radio traffic, called Goose Hill. I do not know why. I have never asked. The ridge was well chosen. It commanded the open ground we would need to cross to reach the settlement proper. It had been fortified. Trench lines, sandbag emplacements, what appeared to be 3 or 4 heavy machine gun positions sited for interlocking fire. The humans had brought no armor and no artillery. The defense was infantry only. We bivouacked at 1900 in a hollow approximately 2 kilometers from the base of the ridge. The plan was to attack at dawn following an artillery preparation. The artillery began ranging shots at 1930 and continued at low intensity through the evening, intended to keep the defenders awake and to disrupt any attempt to improve their positions overnight. At 0214, our forward artillery battery, 6 self-propelled guns and their crews, sighted approximately 3 kilometers behind the main body of the brigade, ceased radio communication. I was on the staff duty rotation that night. I logged the loss of contact at 0216 and dispatched a runner. The runner returned at 0247. He reported that the battery had been overrun. All 6 guns had been destroyed by demolition charges placed inside the breech mechanisms. The crews, 42 personnel, had been killed at close range, almost all by knife or by suppressed small arms fire. The sentries at the perimeter had been killed first, also at close range. There were no human casualties at the battery site that we could find. I want to describe the perimeter sentries. The battery had been protected by a perimeter of 8 sentries arrayed at 50-meter intervals, each in covered positions, each in radio contact with the battery's command tent on a 1-minute check-in cycle. To kill all 8 sentries silently in succession, fast enough that none of them missed a check-in, would require an infiltration team that knew the location of every sentry, the timing of every check-in, the radio frequencies in use, and the precise schedule of the artillery's own firing pattern, so that the kills could be timed to coincide with the noise of outgoing rounds. It would require, in other words, that the humans had been watching us for some time, from somewhere close enough to read our radio traffic and our firing schedule before they began the operation. We had not been on the planet for 24 hours. The infiltration team had not been detected entering or leaving. The battery site, when our recovery team reached it, was as clean as a parade ground. The bodies of our soldiers had been laid out in a row. Their personal effects had been placed beside them. The Crenari military identification discs of all 42 casualties had been stacked neatly on the command tent table, in order of rank, with a small note in legible Crenari that read, "Please return these to their families. We are sorry for your loss." The note was signed A. Halford Major. General Vasarak read the note. He read it twice. He folded it carefully and placed it in his uniform pocket. He gave no order at that time. He stood briefly with his back to the staff, and when he turned around, his face was composed. He cancelled the dawn assault. He brought up the 2nd artillery battery from the reserve and ordered it sighted within the main body of the brigade, with a full infantry security perimeter. He ordered the night watch doubled. He ordered all radio traffic re-encrypted on emergency keys. He ordered every sentry position checked in person by an officer of company rank or higher, every hour through the remainder of the night. The remainder of the night passed without incident. I did not sleep. I will summarize the next 5 days because the pattern was consistent and I do not wish to dwell on it. We attempted a frontal assault on Goose Hill on the morning of day 2. The assault was preceded by a 60-minute artillery preparation. The artillery preparation was effective. Aerial reconnaissance showed substantial damage to the visible trench lines. The assault was led by 2 battalions of heavy infantry, approximately 1,400 men with armored support. The assault failed at a cost of 311 casualties. The humans, it turned out, had not been in the visible trench lines. They had been in a second set of trenches, dug behind the visible ones on the reverse slope of the ridge, where our artillery could not reach them. They emerged after the bombardment lifted, occupied the original trenches in the gap of perhaps 90 seconds before our assault came into range, and opened fire at the optimal distance with weapons that included, we now understood, individual anti-armor systems we had not anticipated. The lead armored element, 6 light tanks, was destroyed in the first 4 minutes of the engagement. The infantry assault closed to within 30 meters of the human positions before it broke. I was not in the assault personally, I was in the reserve. I watched it through field optics. I want to say, and I will say, that the assault was conducted with courage. Crenari infantry are not cowards. They went forward in good order and they were cut down in good order. And the survivors withdrew in good order, and we counted 311 of our brothers on the field afterward. The humans, we estimated from our observation, had taken perhaps 15 casualties. The night of day 2, the humans raided again. This time they hit our supply column 20 kilometers to the rear. They destroyed 17 of our 40 supply trucks and killed 63 of our soldiers. The raiding party, and we know this because one of them was wounded badly enough that he could not be extracted, and we captured him, consisted of 12 men. 12. The wounded man was a Marine corporal named Davies. He was perhaps 30 of his species years old. He had a leg wound that had bled severely before our medics reached him, and he was in considerable pain. He answered our questions with his name, his rank, his service number, and nothing else. When we offered him medical treatment, he accepted it. When we asked him how the raids were being coordinated, he smiled and said in possible Crenari, "I expect you'll find out, Captain." He died of his wounds 2 days later. He did not, in any interrogation I am aware of, provide any operationally useful information. On day 3, the humans destroyed our forward fuel depot. On day 4, they ambushed a battalion of our infantry on the march, killing approximately 80 and wounding twice that number, and disappeared before our reserves could close the trap. The ambush had been laid by an estimated force of perhaps 50 Marines. The terrain they chose for the ambush was, we determined afterward, the only piece of cover within 4 kilometers that had not been swept by our reconnaissance, because it sat in a small dead zone between 2 of our patrol routes that intersected at an angle we had not thought to vary. They had been watching our patrol routes. On day 5, they sniped 4 of our officers. The shots came from a ridge 2 kilometers distant. The rifle used, we determined from recovered bullet fragments, was a long-barreled precision weapon of a type our small arms intelligence had not catalogued. On day 6, General Vasarak authorized a counter-raid against a suspected human forward observation post. The counter-raid was the right decision. It was professionally planned. It was conducted by a company of our best light infantry, 240 men under an officer I had served with for 9 years. The counter-raid found the observation post. The observation post was empty. The observation post had been empty, we determined from the cooled state of the equipment, for approximately 6 hours. The humans had known we were coming and had withdrawn cleanly before we arrived. As our company moved through the empty position, they came under accurate mortar fire from a second position, approximately 3 kilometers away, which had been zeroed onto the first position in advance. The company lost 47 men in 11 minutes before they could clear the impact zone. The officer I had served with for 9 years was one of the 47. I want to be honest about my state at this point in the campaign. I was tired. I was angry. I was beginning for the first time in my career to be afraid in a way that I did not know how to suppress. The fear was not of the humans as individuals. I had seen Davies die, and he had been a man, and men can be killed. The fear was of the system the humans appeared to be operating, in which every move we made was anticipated, every position we occupied was observed, every weakness we revealed was exploited within hours by a force that was, on paper, less than 10% of our strength. By the evening of day 6, we had lost 691 men. We estimated the humans had lost perhaps 40. General Vossarak summoned his staff for a council of war. I want to describe the counterattack of Day 7 because it was the action in which I personally participated, and because it was the action that more than any other changed the way I think about my profession. The plan, in summary, was a deep envelopment. The brigade would fix the human position with a feint at the front of Goose Hill, while our 2 best battalions, approximately 2,800 men, would move overnight to attack the human position from the rear. We had identified from our aerial reconnaissance a route through broken ground to the east of the ridge that would allow us to bring the assault force into position by 0430. The assault would be supported by every artillery piece we still had functional. The artillery preparation would be brief, 15 minutes, but maximal. The plan was sound. I will say that even now. It was the right plan given what we knew. What we did not know was that the humans had also identified the route through the broken ground, and that they had been preparing for us to use it for 6 days. The assault force began moving at 2200 on the night of day 6. I was with the lead battalion in command of the 2nd Company. We moved in silence, in good order, with our radios on emission control. The night was overcast. The ground was difficult but passable. By 0300, we were approximately 4 kilometers from the human rear position. We had not been detected as far as we could determine. At 0317, the first mine went off. I did not see the explosion directly. I saw the flash, and I heard the noise, and I heard the screaming begin from the front of the column. The mine had been a directional anti-personnel charge, what the humans, I later learned, called a claymore, and it had been positioned to engage the head of a column moving along the route we were moving along. It killed 11 of my brothers in the first detonation. The second mine went off 6 seconds later, further back in the column. The third went off 4 seconds after that. The mines had been positioned along the entire length of the route, spaced to engage a column at the intervals a column would naturally form, with command detonation arrangements that allowed a small number of humans to choose which mines to fire and in what order. The mines were not a complete defense. They killed perhaps 80 of us in the first minute, but they served a different purpose. They held us in place. They held us in place for the 11 minutes it took for the human counter-artillery, which had been pre-registered on our route, to begin landing. I want to describe the next 40 minutes. The artillery was accurate. It was the most accurate counter-battery fire I have ever experienced. The shells walked through our formation in patterns that suggested the humans had observers very close to us, close enough to call corrections in real time. We could not return fire because we did not know where the observers were, and we could not move because the mines that had not yet detonated would catch us if we tried, and we could not reach our radio contact with the rear of the brigade because the human electronic warfare assets, which we had not known they possessed, were jamming our command frequencies on every channel we tried. We took our heaviest casualties in those 40 minutes. By 0400, my battalion had lost approximately 400 of its original 800 men. The lead battalion had lost more. The 2 battalion commanders were both dead. I was, by the brutal arithmetic of seniority, the ranking officer in the assault force. I gave the order to withdraw. I am told, in the dispatches that came out of that night, that the withdrawal was conducted with great professionalism. I do not remember it that way. I remember pulling men out of the burning broken ground in any order I could, and I remember the artillery continuing to fall on us all the way back to our start line, and I remember not being able to feel my hands because of how tightly I'd been gripping my pistol for the previous hour. When the sun came up, I had brought out approximately 1,700 of the original 2,800. The brigade had lost almost a third of its remaining strength in a single night. We did not attack again on days 8, 9, or 10. General Vossarak, to his credit, did not order another assault. He understood by then what we were facing. He consolidated the brigade into a tight defensive perimeter. He requested orbital reinforcement, which was denied. The cruisers in orbit had been recalled to deal with a separate human action in the next system, and the troop transports could not be safely brought down in a contested environment. He waited. The humans did not attack our perimeter. They did continue to bleed us. Snipers, mortar harassment, a raid on the night of day 9 against our medical station, which they did not destroy. They took only the medical supplies they needed, and they did so without harming any of the wounded, but which made the point very clearly that they could reach into our perimeter whenever they chose. 3 of my men the night of day 9 came to me and asked very quietly whether I thought we could win. I told them I did not know. I had been trained to lie to my soldiers in such moments, and I could not bring myself to do it. They thanked me for my honesty, which I had not earned, and they returned to their positions. On the morning of day 11, the humans transmitted a message on our command frequency. The message was again signed by Major Halford. It was again polite. It read, "General Vossarak, we have observed your dispositions, and we believe your brigade has sustained sufficient casualties to make further offensive action impracticable. We would be willing to discuss terms under flag of truce at your convenience. If it is helpful, we will guarantee passage for a delegation under our personal escort. Please respond on this frequency. Regards. A. Halford, Major." General Vossarak read the message to his staff. There was no laughter this time. He composed his reply personally. It read, "Major Halford, we would welcome the opportunity to discuss terms. We will dispatch a delegation at 1400 local time. Thank you for your courtesy." He turned to his staff. He selected me to lead the delegation. I walked across the broken ground between our perimeter and Goose Hill at 1400 with 2 staff officers and a translator. The ground was cratered and littered with debris. The bodies of our soldiers had been collected. The humans had given us 48 hours to recover our dead, and they had not fired on the recovery parties. The human position, when we reached it, was not what I had expected. I had expected fortifications. I had expected men. I found on the reverse slope of the ridge a small command post built into a sandbagged dugout, with a camouflage net stretched over the top, and perhaps 15 Marines visible in the immediate area. They watched us approach without curiosity. They did not raise their weapons. One of them, a young woman with a bandage across one side of her face, directed us to the dugout with a polite gesture. Major Halford was inside. She was sitting on an ammunition crate. She was approximately of middle age for a human, with grey beginning at her temples and a deep weariness in her posture that I recognized because I felt it in my own body. Her left arm was in a sling. The skin on the right side of her face had been burned recently and severely, and was healing under a transparent medical dressing. She had been writing something on a paper pad when we entered. She set the pad down, stood up with some difficulty, and offered me her good hand. I took it. She greeted me in Krinari. Her accent was poor, but her grammar was correct. "Captain," she said, "thank you for coming. Please sit." I sat. My staff officers remained standing. The translator hovered uncertainly in the entrance, since Major Halford was speaking my language. I dismissed him with a small gesture. There was a pause. I had expected to open the conversation. The negotiating party traditionally speaks first. But Major Halford did not seem to be waiting for me. She was studying my face with what appeared to be genuine professional interest, the way one officer looks at another. "You led the assault through the eastern ground," she said. I confirmed that I had. "You handled the withdrawal well," she said. "Most commanders in your position would have lost more." I wanted to say that. I was watching. I did not know how to respond to this. I made some noise of acknowledgement. She did not seem to expect more. She turned to a small folder on the crate beside her and produced a single sheet of paper. She handed it to me. It was the proposed terms. They were generous in the same way our original offer had been generous, which is to say, professionally generous. Our brigade would withdraw from the planet under safe conduct, retaining personal arms and unit colors. The mining colony would remain in human hands. Our wounded would receive human medical care during the evacuation period. There would be no formal surrender ceremony. I read the terms twice. I asked her, because I had to ask, what her own casualties had been. She considered the question. She did not appear to be calculating. She appeared to be deciding how honest to be. 130, she said, out of 394. About a third. A third. I had lost almost half my brigade. She had lost a third of a garrison 8 times smaller than my brigade, and she had stopped us cold, and she was sitting here apologizing politely for the burn on her face. I said something, I do not now remember what, about the difficulty of the campaign. She nodded. She said, "It has been hard for both of us. I would like it to be over." I asked her, because I could not help myself, how she had done it. She smiled. The smile was tired and contained no triumph. She said, "We were here for a long time before you arrived. We knew the ground. We knew where you would have to come from. We made a plan and we executed it. There is no secret, Captain. We were the right people in the right place with enough preparation." I asked her how she had known where to place the mines. She looked at me for a long moment. "We watched you," she said, "for 3 days. From the eastern ridge. We had observers within 400 meters of your forward positions for the entire campaign. We knew where you would walk because we had walked there ourselves the previous month, marking the ground." I looked at her. I asked, "And the artillery battery the first night?" "Marine Reconnaissance Company," she said. 8 men. They knew where the battery would deploy because there was only one piece of ground in your staging area where a battery of that caliber could be sighted without compromising sight lines. They observed for 6 hours, identified the sentries, and moved at the optimal point in your firing cycle. "Major," I said, "how long have you been on this planet?" 6 years, she said. I sat with that for some time. She did not press me. She picked up her pen and made some small notation on her paper pad and waited. I signed the terms. She countersigned them. She stood up with the same difficulty as before, and she walked me to the entrance of the dugout. At the threshold, she paused and offered me her good hand again. "Captain," she said, "I want to say one more thing. Your men fought very well. The withdrawal in the eastern ground was the most professional retreat I have seen in 26 years of service. I have written this in my own dispatches. If you ever wish to leave your service, I think there are many places that would value an officer of your quality." I shook her hand. I thanked her. I did not, then or later, know what to say in reply. We withdrew over the following 4 days. The humans were as good as their word. Our wounded were treated in the human field hospital, which was better equipped than ours had been. Our dead were returned to us in clean uniforms with their personal effects with care. Major Halford attended the final ceremony of departure in person, in a clean dress uniform with her arm still in its sling, and she saluted General Vossarak at the foot of his shuttle ramp, and the general returned the salute, and neither of them spoke. We lifted at 0900 on the 15th day of the campaign. I have spent 14 years in service since that morning. I have been promoted twice. I have led a battalion in 2 further campaigns, both successful, neither against humans. I am, by the standards of my service, a competent officer with a respectable record. I think about Major Halford perhaps once a week. I think about her command post, which had not been a command post but a dugout. I think about the 15 Marines I saw on the reverse slope, who were what remained of a garrison that had broken a brigade. I think about the pen she was using when I entered, and what she had been writing and whether any of it survived. I think about her offer. I have not, in the 14 years since, accepted it. I am Crinari, and I will end my service as Crinari. But I will say in this private record that I have considered it more than once, and I have considered it most often on the nights when I cannot sleep. And I have considered it because of the way she said we were the right people in the right place with enough preparation, with no triumph, with no contempt, with no surprise, as though the entire campaign had been simply the application of competent labor to a difficult problem. I've spent 14 years trying to be that kind of officer. I do not know whether I have succeeded. I do know that I have, in those 14 years, never once cancelled a dawn assault because of an overnight raid that I could not understand. I have never once underestimated a force smaller than my own. I have never once read an intelligence briefing without asking, at least twice, what the briefing might have missed. These are small things. I learned them from a tired woman on an ammunition crate, with a burn on her face and her arm in a sling, who took my hand at the threshold of a dugout on a hill she had defended for 11 days with a force 1/10 my size, and who told me that my withdrawal had been professional and who meant it. Goose Hill, the humans called it. I have never asked them why.